Okay, we are recording. Martin, how are you? Well, I say how are you today? We've just had a conversation, and you've told me that that the pandemic has got you, and you currently hold up with COVID. Is it the first time you've had it?
Yeah, it is. I was like entertaining notions that maybe I was immune.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Somehow I didn't get it. I read some article that like it's possible like some people could be immune to it. I'm like,
Yeah,
me. But yeah. Although, I also thought maybe back in like February of 2020, I was uh real estate was about to put a record out, and so me and Alex, the bass player, did like a press tour of Europe. We were in like a bunch of different cities in like a few days, and then I came home, and 2 weeks later I felt really sick. And all the symptoms kind of lined up with what was,
yeah,
no, I guess at that point we were aware of the idea of COVID. But anyway, so I may have had it really early on as well.
yeah.
We'll never.
Okay. Well, I hope you make a speedy recovery. It definitely feels to me. I mean, I don't know what it's like. Whereabouts are you right now? Obviously, we're in the UK. Whereabouts are you in America?
I live in New York, New York State, like about an hour and a half north of the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the kind of situation with sort of post pandemic now? Is everything kind of back to normal out there, and it's just a case of starting to sort of live with it?
Yes, definitely that is what everybody is doing. Although, everybody also seems to be getting COVID. So
Yeah.
I just feel like, they all the I mean, I was admittedly being lax with wearing masks and stuff. I was
Sure.
enjoying some idea of normalcy. So yeah, it caught up with me. I don't know. I mean, also hearing about tons of people going on tour, and every single band, it seems like, is having to either pause their tour or cancel it
Sure.
altogether. I was supposed to play, real estate was supposed to play a show in Mexico this weekend, uh, which sadly, I mean, yesterday I was like, this cannot be happening. It's like I hadn't have one, we had nothing going on for the past like few months. This is the first,
Well,
first
you could have had COVID. That would have been a great time to have had COVID.
any other time, it's like like, of course, this is when I get it. So yeah, we just yesterday I was like, all right, well, what if by some miracle like I test negative on Thursday, and I was like, because we're flying out on Friday,
Right.
so I was, but today we were just like, no, like it's not gonna happen, and
Yeah.
like that, what if I test negative, and then I test positive in Mexico, because you have to have a negative test to come back to the States.
Right.
And then, if if there's some weird anomaly, I'm flying on an airplane with COVID, which I don't want to do, obviously,
Yeah.
and give it to a bunch of other people. And then B, I could just get stuck in Mexico, and for
Yeah.
who knows how long. And which doesn't sound terrible, except I've got kids and stuff. It wouldn't be very
Sure.
nice to my wife, for me to just ditch the family and hang out in Mexico for a week. Uh,
Okay. Well, look. Let's park up talking about
yeah, nobody wants.
pandemics and illness, and let's try and have a bit of escapism into the consistently wonderful world of music. And so I'd like to start your playlist, please, Martin, and ask you for track one, what is the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro?
Okay. Well, it's funny because, well, I forgot that this was a playlist and not just me answering questions. Which, so I answered them very honestly with like the first thing that popped into my head with all of these, which is the easiest way to do it, obviously. But I don't know how well this is gonna this is gonna be a weird playlist in terms of how things flow. But so my first, maybe seems like an obvious answer, but the first thing that came to my head for the song with the greatest intro was Sweet Jane. Um, just because that intro is so beautiful and uh seemingly untethered to like the rest of the song, but
Yeah,
so it's great. What a great intro. And like, how do they do it? Like, how do they make those sounds?
yeah,
It's so beautiful. So yeah, that's the first thing. And then for like a less obvious answer, I went with Weezer, Only in Dreams, which is like the blue album was like one of my favorite albums when I was in like third grade,
Yeah,
when it came out, and it stayed with me for years. And I mean, it holds up. It's such a
yeah,
good album. And yeah, that the kind of the baseline intro, uh, kind of stuck with me. I was a bass player when I was a kid. I always played the bass in a lot of different bands and stuff. So like, it's a great bass line, but also it's kind of like a template for a certain type of like alt rock last track on the album, like sort
yeah,
of more emo than the rest of the album usually. And like,
yeah, yeah.
but, usually like could always a contender for like the best track, and so yeah, that's my other answer, I guess.
In regards to intros, I'm always fascinated, and bear with me with the question because I've asked it probably 400 times now on this podcast, and I never managed to frame it exactly how I want it to come across. But just in the way that um, seeing the changes in technology and the way in which a majority of people now listen to their music, finding it on streaming platforms and such. Um, and there seems to be pressure, probably more so in more commercial pop music, uh, to grab them quick, to get on these playlists, and trim all the fat off the songs, and I just wonder the creative process that you go through when you make a record, and essentially the intro. Does any of that filter through into your process?
You mean for the beginning of like the intro in terms of the first track on an album, or just
First
song?
track in general, like the opening of any track.
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on the song, because sometimes I am just intentionally writing like a song that I do want to be, if like it's fun to write pop songs, and it's fun to write to kind of exercise that muscle in me as
Yeah,
like a so sometimes I intentionally, like you said, I don't want to have an intro, and I or a long intro at least, and some, and I've been on a kick where like I'm almost consciously doing less, not to trim the fat, but just to be like, sometimes I get in my head about like not wanting a song to be too short or too long, and that, because then I'll end up with, I'll write a song and I'll be like, this song's great, and then I look and it's like 2.5 minutes long, but like there's not really anything wrong with that. um but no, it really does depend on the song. Some songs are just want to have that kind of epic quality to them, so then sometimes you'll have the long intro. uh I don't know. I mean, the last real estate record, the first track is not even that long. It's maybe 5 or 6 minutes long, but it's got this long intro. And I feel like at least one person from the label or management, or maybe multiple people, were like, especially with Spotify, which I hate the idea of like catering, or like, you know making creative decisions based on like, playlisting, or grabbing people
yeah,
who are otherwise going to have a short attention span and just move on to something else because there's this long intro. But like, I don't know, that's really not how our band operates. It really just depends on what we want to do. Sometimes we want
yeah.
to make short songs, sometimes we want to make long ones. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, absolutely, absolutely. That's perfectly. I'm going to take you back for track two, Martin. I'm going to ask you, please, to tell me the first song that you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please.
Yeah. I was thinking Blind Melon, No Rain, that song
Yeah,
No Rain. Because I remember being a little kid, in maybe first or second grade, so 6 or 7 years old, hearing that song. And it was like, it's the first song that I learned all the lyrics to, and I really loved it. And I think it probably has to do with like kind of the emotional quality of that guy's voice,
yeah,
whose name I'm blanking on. He's got such a great voice, and like kind of that like warble, I don't know, just the way he sings, I probably was just unlike anything I had heard up until that point.
yeah,
And it really struck a chord with me. Um, and I can't say I really understood, or to this day have any idea maybe what the song is about. Not that I've ever really sat down and tried to analyze the lyrics, but it's more about the kind of the sound of the music. And I think when you're
Yeah,
that little, that's kind of more of what tends to resonate is just, yeah, the voice and maybe the chord progressions and the,
yeah.
the kind of surface level stuff with the music. So that's, yeah.
And the video was huge. You know,
Yeah.
the little girl dressed as a bumblebee, just sort of dancing around. I remember, I'm a lot older than you, and that was just on rotation in the UK on MTV constantly.
Yeah, it
And
was
if I'm right, I think there was a tension around Blind Melon because I can't remember what the singer's name was. He died, didn't he?
yes.
Um, but was he Axl Rose's nephew or something? Or
I
he's
don't
he, he's in the video to. I don't know much about Guns N' Roses, but I think there's a track called "Don't Cry," and he's in the video. The guy from Blind Melon, a very young lad singing, and so I think that's how maybe they got their breakthrough, being related to, I guess, arguably the biggest band in the
know.
world at that point.
I didn't know that at all. That's great. Uh, if true,
Yeah.
maybe
Uh,
true.
and I did see, it's driving me mad what the guy's name from Blind Melon was. But I did see that they've just released a film. It would appear that somebody kept footage of Blind Melon from day one, filmed everything, like right the way up to the end, and they've just put this huge sort of documentary film together. And aside from No Rain, certainly in the UK, like they weren't a huge band in the UK. That track was massive, but
Yeah, they're kind of a one-hit wonder.
yeah,
I love that though. I mean, to be honest, like the the idea of somebody filming a band from day one, like it it takes a lot of, like we've had with real estate, we when we made our third album, our we had a friend hanging out with us in the studio for a few days with a camera, and it feels very self-important and like
yeah,
silly kind of to be doing that, because it is. But then I don't know, like as a fan of another, of a band that, it's like you cherish having that. I mean,
yeah.
obviously the Beatles thing, the Get Back, but
Oh man,
can you imagine like the grandiosity to film, out days worth of, footage of yourselves just like jamming and messing
yeah,
around, but at the same time it's such, there's so many gems in there and it's so worth having. Like
yeah,
even with real estate, with, just that we made like a little 5 minute thing on YouTube about, you know the few days that guy was there when we were making that record. But to be honest, like I remember thinking like, oh, this is so cool that we did this, and I think people really appreciated it. People that like that record, it's like
yeah.
it's nice to be able to see, footage from the studio and stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just one more question on the song choice. Um, if you had to pinpoint what the actual emotion was that you got from it, what do you think it would have been?
See, I don't. It's whatever emotion I get when I hear music, that because it still happens. I mean, like I get like, I'm sure everybody does, but like if I hear something, it that just on the, surface aesthetic level just hits a note with me, I'll get chills, like if I hear something that really does it for me. um and so I don't know, I don't think I could put it into words. It's
Yeah,
kind of feeling that I'm constantly trying to capture when I'm making my own music. It's like
yeah,
that just whatever that feeling is when you hear something that you love, that you resonate with.
yeah,
um but it obviously wasn't nostalgia, because I because I was
yeah,
young to be feeling that. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it was. Just that it's almost an in describable thing. That
yeah.
feeling that it gives you.
Let's stay in the formative years for track three, and I'm going to ask you, please, Mike, to tell me the song that reminds you of your time at school.
Uh, so this was tough because there's so many different eras, and like, I could have said,
You can throw some honourable mentions
yeah,
in there.
yeah. I mean, even the Blind Melon song would be one. That those early days, and then there's the Weezer also, that from grade school. I wouldn't I was in, like, I went through a big Dave Matthews Band kick. Ants Marching would have been in there, but like I would say my most probably musically formative era, I think for a lot of people, is when they're in their kind of early teens. Uh, you know, grade 9, grade 10, something like that. That's kind of when I like developed my love of more, I guess, alternative stuff. Or oh no, I stopped recording.
That's
Um,
cool. That's cool.
all right, I'm just gonna hit record again. And
Okay.
sorry, we may have lost a little bit. Okay.
No worries.
So yeah, so that's yeah, high school, great, grades 9, 10. That's kind of when I yeah, started kind of discovering more whatever, less popular, more alternative kind of
Yeah.
music, and developed a kind of a friend group that I maintain to this day. Some of whom, Alex Bleeker and Julian Lynch are in the band right now. Those are friends that I had back in those days. So anyway, um, and I could pick a lot of tracks from then too. There's, Built to Spill and Pavement, stuff like that. Those are like kind of my early indie rock bands. But
Can, can we just talk about that before we get on your song choice? Just
sure.
because um, they're bands that were making waves when I'd just left school, and Slanted had just come out, and there was so many of the what we were sort of saying, American sort of lo-fi bands that were coming over, like Built to Spill and things like that, and it was like, and I just wonder, it would appear that at that, when you was at that age, you was definitely looking further back rather than what was happening right then, because them records surely would have come out 10 years previous to
That's
that.
true. Um, that's true, and I don't know why. Okay, because the Pixies would have been in there as well, and they probably hadn't put a record out for a few
Yeah,
years.
of course.
I discovered them. Um, Built to Spill were still doing stuff.
Mm,
So, but even them, I mean, the first Built to Spill records I got into were the probably the ones from the mid '90s.
yeah,
Uh, so, and we're talking early 2000s probably when I was getting into this stuff.
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I could say Pixies. I could say definitely the Fight Club soundtrack. I would say like friends of mine like heard that song,
yeah,
myself included, and we were like, "Whoa, what is this? This song is amazing." Um, Pavement are just one of those bands that you just discover, and they hadn't made they I guess they had put out their last record a few years before I discovered them. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe we were just starting with the the earlier things and then
yeah,
making our way forward. I feel like the '90s was such a like a formative time for that type of indie rock, like that. Yeah, that
absolutely.
kind of more lo-fi thing. Um, so yeah, it is interesting. I mean, Built to Spill, luckily, like they were still putting records out, and I saw them so many times when I was in high school, and they were definitely one of my favorite bands. Um, and they kind of put me on to stuff like Neil Young, because they would cover Cortez the Killer, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I can hear how they were influenced by this guy, and then I got really into Neil Young through them. Um, and Sonic Youth as well, big Neil Young heads. But anyway, the song I was gonna pick um, was from a more kind of current band from those days when I was like, basically the band is called the Microphones, and he put out a record, The Glow Part Two, when I was right at that time. When I was probably 14 or something, or 15, maybe 15. I remember hearing it right after it came out, and my friends and I, like, I have a very specific memory of being in Alex Bleeker, my bass player in Real Estate's bedroom, and us, um, whatever, after school, we may have done some stuff that our parents wouldn't have liked, like some weed or something, and put that album on, and really just really fully had our minds blown by that first track, I Want Wind to Blow. And I mean the whole album, but then also being aware that he home record or recorded the album himself, in like a makeshift studio in Olympia, Washington. Like that really made a huge impression on me. That I DIY thing, that was kind of almost probably my first uh whatever time becoming aware that you could do that, that you could make
Yeah.
your own albums and you didn't need a label and you didn't need like, a ton of money beyond whatever it cost to buy the gear, which he was probably using some really nice gear by the sounds of that. I was like, this album sounds incredible and it sounds like nothing I've ever heard, I mean, and he's obviously a genius to this day. Uh, like, so, I mean, there's that, but yeah, it was inspiring, I would say. And my friends
Yeah.
and I, after that that was when we decided, like, because we were in bands together, we were writing songs and stuff, but
Yeah.
that was when kind of the shift happened in our head that like, oh, we could actually do this ourselves, and it doesn't need to sound like it was recorded in a super fancy studio. Like we can embrace the limitations of like, you know, what we have, and just make stuff that sounds weird. Uh, and yeah, so it was big time inspiring.
And being in bands at school, and obviously being, a creative young man at that point, was that encouraged at school?
Um, we were lucky to go to a school where it was. Yeah, at a certain point, there were some kids at, like a few grades above us that were in a band, and I think they graduated right before we got to the high school. But I remember kind of becoming aware of them and being like, "Oh, cool! Like you can be in a band." And so then we decided that day to start a band when we heard about their band, and that just snowballed into like everybody that was in that initial band started their own band, and everybody, and everybody wanted to start writing songs, and I played the bass guitar. I didn't actually start writing songs until way later, but I played bass. Nobody else played bass, so I played in all the bands. I think I was in like 12 or 13 bands in high school. But yeah, we were lucky because there was this one guidance counselor named uh, Basil Pizzuto, and he was just super supportive, and he himself was a musician, and he like actually went out and used the school budget to buy us a PA system, and
Yeah.
once a month he'd put on these open mics, he called them, where we would just basically gave us a reason to keep practicing because we always had a show to look forward to, in the school cafeteria. And then we would start putting on shows in our own backyards and stuff, and there was kind of this little scene that sprung up. um Yeah. Some. I mean, like, I don't know if you've heard of the band Titus Andronicus. I'm sure
Yeah.
aware of them. Those were kids that I went to high school with, and I played
Yeah.
in bands with them, and they were kind of part of that scene, or Patrick was. Um, and yeah, so we actually did a ton of playing music in our high school, and it was condoned by,
Yeah.
and also obviously having supportive parents who bought us instruments, and being in the lucky position of having folks that had money to buy us guitars, like
Sure.
it all kind of played into it. But yeah, we were definitely did a ton of music making in high school for sure.
Just got one more in the sort of formative years. Can you tell me, please, for track four, the first song you remember buying from a record store?
Yes. Yeah, it was the Soundgarden album Super Unknown. So I don't know what year that came out, but I was a kid. I was in grade school. Uh,
93, maybe?
90. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I was like 8 years old. Yeah, I was really into all that. Was what they were playing on like pop radio back then. Was that kind of grunge, alt rock stuff. So I was really into Smashing Pumpkins, and I also had an older sister. Um, she's 8 years older than me, so like she was probably in high school at the time. She turned me onto some stuff as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I was super into Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana, Soundgarden, different types of, you know, I was really into Pearl Jam too. They get a bad rep these days, but I think they're great. I think they had a lot of great songs.
When you mentioned about filming, I don't know if you've ever seen it come out about 10 years, maybe more. The Pearl Jam 20 documentary that Cameron Crowe made.
Uh-uh.
Uh, it's incredible. Like, again, there's people filming all of like Mother Love Bone and all of the bands that they come from, and obviously there's footage of them meeting to create Temple of Dog, and it's the first time they're filming like Eddie like singing for the first time, and their minds are blown, and it's
Cool.
such an incredible documentary. And I think what comes across more than anything, I'm actually going to see Pearl Jam. I'm going to see Pearl Jam in about 3 weeks. Actually, they're playing a big outdoor show in the UK. Um, this they've done it their way, and to take on Ticketmaster and things like that, they and to stop making videos when the emphasis of your band is on videos. I just think they made some pretty brave moves, and when you watch the documentary, you realise they were really young lads as well. Like they weren't, they've obviously matured as a band now, but like, yeah, I think they've done some real maverick moves, and I do think sometimes they get a bit of a bad rap, and I don't know why.
They're because yeah, I mean, I maybe it's like his voice kind of spawned 1,000 sound-alikes that were
Yeah,
just not as good.
yeah,
Like a band like Creed comes to mind.
yeah. We don't need.
Just,
Yeah,
so it's easy to be like, I don't know if he was the first one, but to kind of yeah, I don't know, to just write them off maybe solely based on his kind of like
yeah.
manly croon or whatever. But like they had great songs, and yeah, I agree. We got to actually the first show we played post, well, whatever the first show we played after COVID kind of shut things down
Hmm.
for a long time was a festival that Pearl Jam or Eddie Vedder organized out in California. So I finally got to see them there, and yeah, it was really great, great band.
Another band that are heavily influenced by Neil Young.
100%, yeah,
Mm,
totally. Um, Yeah, though. But so if you're asking for a specific song, I was going to say Black Hole Sun because that again was a song that really kind of blew my mind as a kid.
yeah,
I literally remember sitting in the back seat of my mom's minivan, hearing that song come on the radio and being, just and the video too was so weird and
mm,
kind of creepy. But but yeah, I can almost probably remember the first time I heard that song, and it's such a cool, weird, like Beatlesy almost,
yeah.
chord progression. Um, and yeah, just kind of a little more complex maybe than a lot of stuff that was you would hear at that time.
Yeah.
Perhaps, I don't know, but cool song,
It's
definitely.
so interesting the amount of people that have been on this podcast, and when they sort of reference like moments of hearing music and it really resonating. I would say 9 out of 10 times I hear that answer, it's talking about being in the back of their parents' car.
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy. It's
So
crazy.
many. Yeah, it is. It's funny because I have so many memories of that of just like be, even the perspective of being really small and the car seems really big and yeah, I don't know because I do think they played better music back then. And now I think about that with my kids because we don't really listen to the radio. We just listen
Yeah,
to. I mean, I do let them. My oldest kid she's 8, so like I'm not trying to force them into anything. Like I'll play my own music. I'll play music that I want sometimes. But oftentimes I'm like, what do you guys want to listen to? And it's a lot of the times it's stuff that I would not want to. Like whatever
yeah,
Disney stuff or things that I'm just not interested in. But I'm not gonna
yeah,
and push them in any one direction. But certain things do click, and they do love the Beatles. They love Paul McCartney. And there's a lot of other examples of things that we can all agree on.
yeah,
So, but yeah, it's true that they're not getting that whatever the outside world isn't really
yeah,
influencing them as much as it did me. I
yeah,
mean, my parents weren't big pop music people when I was young. My dad loves classical music. Um, and my mom I found out later that she actually did she I mean she went and saw Bowie and was really into cool music when she was younger, but by the time she had me, she was just listening to the radio too. But
yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of where I between the radio and my older sister, that was kind of where I got my musical whatever information.
So there's
Oh,
a
sorry,
go on. Sorry.
before we move on, I'm gonna let my dog in because he's
Of
barking.
course, do it.
Second. All right, sorry about that.
So I've been when I got sent your tracks, there was a little note attached to this when I asked the guests about the song that soundtracked their year's clubbing. I should put a little note on the end of that question because so many people have sent over something similar to what you said, which is most musicians are like, well, we didn't really go clubbing. Like we was making music and things like that. So that question can lend itself to a local bar that you may have hung out in that had a good jukebox, or where you go and like hang out and watch bands. Anything in that them kind of sort of college years that kind of would involve socializing and there being music. Some sort of stronger memory from then, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I inferred. And yeah, I mean I would say my clubbing years would have been my like yeah early 20s, when which was coincided with when we were starting real estate, and so spending a lot of time in the city, going to a lot of gigs, playing a lot of gigs too. So yeah, that kind of late 2000s, early 2010s kind of era for me would be 2008, maybe like 2009, uh 10, 11, like around then. So uh anyway, the song I picked was a song by the band Girls, Lust for Life, because I remember that was another one where like one day they didn't exist, and then the next day they were like all anybody was talking about, at least in my little world of indie rock. And they were so great and just kind of just emerged fully formed with like this big personality and great story and everything. um and the song was, well, I guess that was probably their first single, but it's yeah just such a cool song and fun and weird, and his delivery is so unique to him. So yeah, I picked it for that reason, because it was kind of a big song for us, but also like I remember like we were super excited about the band, and we got really we were like uh whatever, just big fans in real estate. And then we reached out to them. I actually don't even remember exactly how it happened, but we ended up opening for their first tour like a few months later. So we were like, oh my god, like just that alone was like just huge, such
Yeah,
we were like, holy crap, this is really happening, like we're opening for the cool band, and like we're going on tour. And it was our first tour, like out west, like first big US tour that we did, that we didn't actually just book ourselves.
yeah,
That was actually booked by a real booking agent, and we were playing real clubs and not house shows. um so yeah, so that's why kind of it was just a big deal for us as kind
yeah.
of musicians, definitely.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to take you home for track six, and if you can tell me a favourite song from an artist from your home county, please.
Yeah. So county, I mean, I inferred as someone from the US, I took that to mean home state.
Yeah,
However,
yeah, yeah. That's cool.
we have counties within our states, so that so you know probably my favorite band of all time happens to be from New Jersey, this band Yola Tango. And so I was initially thinking it'd be really easy to pick a Yola Tango song, although it's hard to pick one of theirs as a favorite. Although they have a song called Our Way to Fall that was like, uh, my wife and I had it as our wedding song. It's
Great
like,
record.
whatever. So I love that song so much, and it's such a beautiful song. Um, but then when you say, it's funny, well, because there's another band that definitely deserves. I mean, there's a lot of really great bands from New Jersey. Um, you know, Springsteen, of course, deserves a shout out. But there's this band, the Feelies, who were actually, I guess, a big influence on Yola Tango, but also they actually happen to be from my home county in New Jersey, Bergen County, and they're also one of my favorite bands. So my official choice is the song "It's Only Life" by the Feelies, but you can play both if you want.
It's always a pleasure to play Yoda Tango. I had never heard anything by the Feelies before, and when I got sent your list over, I went and played some tracks. It's really fucking great, man.
Oh, they're the best. I mean, their first record is more like angular. Uh, the first record is called Crazy Rhythms, and it's like, yeah, post punk, early '80s, like not quite Devo Angular, like, but it's it's almost an outlier. And then they've got, because then their next two or three records after that um are like, yeah, just really pastoral, like acoustic guitar strumming, really great electric leads over it. Um, just great songs, and yeah, just yeah, really worth checking out for sure. The Feelies, if you haven't
Yeah.
heard them, they're a really great band, and a big influence on a lot of bands, kind
Yeah.
of from that era, definitely.
Well, you get to influence again for the last track, and it's a song that you think many people may not know that you would like them to hear, please.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I had hard. Not I didn't really have a hard time because I like I said, I kind of went with the first thing that came to mind for all these. But yeah, you never know if the thing that you think is like cool and obscure, like actually everybody just knows about it, and I just didn't know about it. But I went with another band who actually are also from New Jersey. They're called the Roches. It's three sisters. They have a song. If you've heard one song by them, it's probably the song Hammond Song, which is like just, I mean, one of the most beautiful songs of all time. Like I literally talk about getting chills. Like every single time I hear that song, it's like it's like the first time I heard it. I
I
love it.
had I had someone on the podcast yesterday, and they chose Hammond song for this question.
Wow, cool.
And I know you're not going to go with Hammond song, but and the thing is, in the UK, it's not that well known. But we was discussing this yesterday that like, and I don't mean it in a kind of snobby indie way that if you know, you know, but it feels like it's like a little sort of secret that like, hey, have you heard this Hammond song by the
Yeah.
Roches? And it's like, and every time you play it to someone, people are like, fuck, this is incredible, and then goes and tells five people. Like, there's something magic about that record.
Well, that's why, I mean, that's why it's such that your question is so good, because that's, I mean, that there are a number of songs like that I've had that experience. Uh, so yeah, it anyway. That is definitely one of them. The song I was going to pick though is from a later, and two albums. So the first record is self-titled. It's produced by Robert Fripp, but it's not, it's just a pretty much like an acoustic kind of folk record. But there are these little, I mean, it's so dry is the first thing about it that feels kind of, the vocals are so dry and the harmonies are so tight that it doesn't feel possible. Like it
Yeah,
almost feels otherworldly. And I don't know if, I mean, that's a combination, I would say, of the production and also just their talent
sure.
of the group. Um, so then they made another record after that, which I'm actually not very familiar with. And then they made this record, uh, which is called Keep On Doing, which was also produced by Fripp. And similarly, like really good album, kind of through and through, but there's one track that really stands out, which is called Losing True, which is my pick for this song. And I to be honest, I hadn't really heard this album until recently. Um, and I like just put it on randomly. I was flying to Texas to play a show, and I was like, "Oh my god, this song is incredible." Then I got to the gig, and the DJ there is like playing records, and he put that song on. I was like, "Wow, this is weird. Like I've never heard this song before today, and you're putting this song on." And it's, that kind of hammered it home. Like it was like only the second time I'd heard the song, and then on the way home I listened to it probably 15 times, just over and
Yeah,
over. Like it's such a beautiful song. So yeah, that's another one. Uh, yeah. I would
wonderful.
also say, if you haven't heard the song Seabird by the Alessi Brothers, you should check that one out as well.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
that's another. I mean, there. I could, if I sat down and thought about it, I could probably list a few. But that's another one that
Yeah,
maybe is more obscure, perhaps. That is worth checking out. It's kind of a weird home recorded. I think they're from like Long Island or something.
yeah.
They're these two brothers. I think they're brothers. I actually don't know anything about them. I might be getting them confused with the Lemon Twigs, who are two brothers from Long Island.
Right.
But no, this is like these two. They're two dudes from the '70s, and it's definitely sounds home recorded. Definitely sounds kind of outsidery, like trying to make pop music, you know. Anyway, Emmett Rhodes, another one. Listen to Emmett Rhodes, home recorded outsidery guy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I could go on.
I will go and explore these and add them to the playlist because we put together a playlist to accompany the podcast so people can go and explore and listen to all of the
Cool.
records that we've chatted about today. Um, Once you're fit and healthy and you've kicked the COVID, um, tell me what you're looking forward to personally from the rest of 2022, which feels it's going to be far more connected and back to a sense of normality that we've known from a few years previous. And and tell me what's coming up professionally.
Yeah. Well, I have a solo record coming out next month. Uh, so I'm looking forward to that and playing some shows this summer and hopefully staying healthy enough to play all the shows that I've got lined. I mean, I only it's pretty modest what I'm trying to achieve with this record. I made it during lockdown uh, just to have something to do,
Yeah,
and it was really fun to make. And that's if that's all that it amounts to, like I'll be happy. But yeah, it's coming out next month, and I hope people like it. And yeah, I'm play a few shows. Nothing, yeah, like a couple shows on the West Coast, a few
yeah,
shows on the East Coast, and then I've just been writing a ton this year and hoping to get back into the studio with real estate in the next few months. We're like trying to figure out the logistics of that, finding a producer and stuff right now. So it's definitely happening,
yeah.
which is exciting. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Martin, if people want to keep up to speed with what you're up to, where's the best place to follow you and find out what's happening?
I mean, probably Instagram or Twitter. You can find me easily on either of those. And those are probably the things that I keep most up to date. Uh,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, if it's cool with you, when we put this episode out, we'll tag you in it so people can find it nice and easy.
Yeah.
Martin, it's been a real pleasure talking records with you today. Thank you so much for your time and get well soon.
So much.
And yeah, and enjoy getting out there and playing the new record.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Martin. I'm going to press stop here.